Welcome to Social Justice Politicast. This is the inaugural episode. Hopefully, the idea here is that we will be a one-stop shop to help you stay up to date with what our elected representatives are doing on both the City Council and the Sac County Board of Supervisors. Because this is the inaugural episode, you're getting me and Gabe this week. But as we will explain a little bit later, we are looking for community participation. So stay tuned for some details on how you can get involved with that. In the meantime, Gabe, do you mind giving us kind of a rundown on the general mission and kind of purpose behind the work that we do here at Social Justice Politicor?
For sure. Yeah. So Social Justice Politicor as an organization exists in Sac County, and we focus on the cultural, political, economic environment of Sac City, Sac County as a whole. The mission of Social Justice Politicor is wanting to see a Sacramento County where all the decisions that impact the lives of our most vulnerable are made with their needs centered, where an equitable and intersectional framework is adopted for policymaking and a shared understanding of social justice is easily accessible and understood by all. I think that a really good way to kind of encapsulate the work that SJPC does is that we are trying to crowdsource information about what is happening at our city government, our county government, with social justice organizations in and around the county, and kind of create a space where someone can come and find out what's happening all over the city, regardless of where their interests are. We have a lot of focus areas, and there are a lot of really great orgs in SAC that do amazing work, and they have very specific niches. And I think that what's really cool about what SJPC does is it kind of puts all of those orgs in a basket and says like, hey, this is what's happening in your city, and this is how you can get involved. So we're really a place where folks can come and find out what's happening every week around Sacramento, how to get involved, how to get plugged in to the social justice work that happens here.
Yeah, so let's just jump right into this next week because we are coming out of recess for both the city and the county, and so there's kind of most of the emphasis this week on Tuesday is going to be around like mayoral appointments, people being appointed to commissions and counties, but there is also some interesting stuff. So I'm just going to kind of start here and run us through. We begin with our meetings on Monday, so this evening, because you're listening to this on Monday morning. Sorry, we're new. We're gonna get all this ironed out, I promise. So this evening at 5:30 p.m., the Community Police Review Commission will be convening. Two of their items of note that we have marked off here are. Item 3, which is the City of Sacramento Community Police Review Commission 2026 work plan. So this is not a controversial item. It's just going to kind of set the stage for what this committee will be focusing on in the upcoming year. And then later on with item 7, we have our selection of chair and vice chair for calendar year 2026 as well, which also is not a controversial item unless they make some wild appointments. So we will kind of see how that goes. We are recommending that this is kind of an observe and record attendance always. Public participation always encouraged, not mandatory for this one. And you can, of course, attend in person remotely. You can also catch up on it at any time during the week by using the links on the city's website.
Just want to add for folks who are unfamiliar with any of the commissions or committees that we discuss on the show, we have a super helpful highlight reel on our SJPC Instagram that has a breakdown of every committee and commission in the city. So if you're like, hey, Community Police Review Commission, that sounds like something I would be interested in. You can get a breakdown of what exactly that commission does in that highlight reel. And so then you can constantly go back and refer to those whenever anything comes up on the agenda that we've flagged.
Yeah, I would say just in general too. For one, the our website, socialjusticesac.org, has a ton of resource for you if there's anything about local government that you aren't sure about how it works or who's doing it or what committees do what. Our website is a pretty good resource for you to go find that. And if there's anything that you can't find on that, please reach out to us on our on our social media platforms, and we'll get back to you and help you with anything that you are requesting help with. So the kind of the first item of note for Tuesday is going to be happening at 11 a.m. It's city council. It's not city council. It's law and legislation, which is a city committee made up of 4 of the city council members. So just to kind of give you a brief overview of what law and legislation does, basically this is the team of city council members who are, they're sort of the first line of defense. So when, say that somebody wants to get an item, one of the council members says, I'd like to, pass this ordinance that I want to do. It first goes to law and legislation. That's the first stop. And then these 4 people will deliberate over it and decide whether or not it needs to go back for, to kind of be updated. It needs more work. They're going to reject it flat out, or they will pass it along to the city council as a whole to vote on. And then at that point, if they do go through with it, then whatever that proposed ordinance is does become law. So law and legislation is kind of a big deal. We'll go kind of more into that later because it will come up in another item or two. But so our first one, item 7, Councilmember Pluckybaum, who represents the Central City, the River District, East Sac, and River Park, he's got a proposal request for committee consideration that would establish limitations on the number of homeless shelter beds and social service structures within the River District. So basically what he is looking to do here. So right now there are, let's see, I wrote this down. There are 526 shelter beds in the River District. The River District, just so everybody's clear, is kind of the part of Sacramento. It's just north of downtown. It's where like Pipeworks is. It's where Loaves and Fishes is. And obviously anybody who's been down there kind of can, you can see that it's a fairly heavily impacted area in terms of homelessness and encampments. And it kind of always has been because that's where, service providers like Loaves and Fishes are. And so it's a good spot for people who are in survival mode to be nearby resources. However, it is also something that I'm sure Phil gets screamed at day and night by the businesses and people who live there because it is a saturated area. So what he is going to do, to give this a little bit of a preface, so there was a cap on the amount of services that could be offered in this area that was lifted in 2025 due to we declared a shelter crisis and rescinded an old ordinance that would allow for more emergency housing and a new navigation center. And now he's looking to put the cap back, which would indicate that, according to Phil, the shelter crisis is over, which, anybody with eyes in their head can kind of see that it's not. My thought on this, is that I understand, and I don't disagree with Phil that like more of the other council members should kind of be chipping in and like doing more to address the crisis, and it shouldn't all be on District 4. But however, that is not happening. And instead of just saying, well, we're not doing it either, it feels to me like the impetus is on Councilmember Pluckybaum to work with his colleagues to get those resources open. If you don't want people if you don't want to offer those services and you don't want to offer those shelter beds in your district, fine, work with people who will open them in theirs and then make a plan. But just outright bans on things, anybody listening to this, we know that is a tried and true way to fail in every way when addressing this issue. So in addition to the cap, it also creates a bunch of red tape like any new shelter or services that would go into the so say right now, there's 526 shelter beds. Well, if a shelter closes down and we lose 26 of those beds, if we want to replace them, Then it takes another 2/3 vote from the city council to fill those back in, to bring it back up to the cap limit. So it adds a layer of red tape, which is, I think there's a way to read that. Anyway, I'll let you make up your own mind about that. I'm not a fan of this one. I think this one is worth showing up and giving public comment on. I will be there at 11 to speak on this myself, basically saying this exact same thing. We can't, this is a guy who, he knew what he knew that this is like, the River District didn't just appear to be like this. The River District this has been the situation in the River District forever. He ran to represent it, and now just passing a ban saying, well, we're just not going to do this anymore, we're like putting a cap on what we're doing, is not leadership, it's laziness. And so that is my official stance on this, which I will be presenting to the Law and Legislation Committee on Tuesday morning.
Feel like you can cut this part out, but that could be Pluck a Bump's tagline, not leadership, laziness. It is overall just a demonstration of a lack of imagination. Again, I know this is something that gets said a lot about city leadership, but as you said, with real leadership, you would see an effort on behalf of city council members working together to share the strain of having, strain, I'm saying in quotation marks, for like the business community who does complain about a heavy concentration of unhoused folks in specific areas. It's like, well, as you mentioned, they're in that area because those areas are where services are provided. So if your goal is to reduce the amount of people who are unhoused in that district, then you need to diversify the areas where services are offered. And instead of actually suggesting that and working with, Councilmember Kaplan or Councilmember, where's the other one that has very few services?
D7. It's Rick Jennings' district.
And Jennings, right? Instead of working with those two council members to try to diversify where services are offered, he's just saying, actually, we're just going to put a cap on it so that no more than 526 beds can be open. And it's just, that doesn't seem like a very human-centric solution.
Well, yeah, it's also like, sorry, man, but you ran and won in a district that is like the most heavily saturated area in the entire county. So like,
yeah,
it's kind of your job to do something about it other than be like, we're not going to do things about it. Right.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, he's, and the way that he's going to try and frame it is, hey, well, I'm just putting things back to how they were before this 2025 law. We declared this crisis and opened things up. So it's really not doing anything except for putting things back the way they were, to which I would say doing what we've always been doing on this is not an attractive proposal, I think, for literally anybody who lives in the city of Sacramento. Yeah.
Agreed.
So anyway, so we are encouraging you, if you are able to make it in person or to call in or to leave written comment on this item. This will be happening Tuesday at 11 a.m. at Law and Legislation. Let's move along here. Later that evening, of course, we'll have our first city council meeting of 2026. That will be starting at 5. This is largely going to be, from what I can see, kind of a ceremonial kind of deal. Gabe, stop me if you want to jump in at any point. But basically, this is just sort of for one of the items. The mayor is going to, Mayor McCarty will appoint his vice mayor and his mayor pro tem selections, which this year Councilmember Talamontes will be appointed as vice mayor and Eric Guerra will be appointed as mayor pro tem. These designations are pretty ceremonial. They don't really do that much more than make their resumes look good. Probably the only way that it will affect anybody like you, like me or Gabe or anybody listening to this podcast is that when Mayor McCarty goes to eat snacks while people give public comment, it will be Karina Telemontes who sits in his chair and presides over that part of the meeting.
Very succinctly put. Yeah, I think that, in terms of impact, not necessarily huge, but if you're just interested in the overall inner workings of city government and how these decisions are made, and who it is that is, either directly or not at all making eye contact with you when you're making public comment, then you know who it's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So then kind of moving along, the next item 4 is mayoral appointments of city council member to council standing committees and various regional authorities, agencies, commissions, and committees. So this is where he will be naming who is going to be on commissions or committees like law and legislation. The city has 4 of these. So in addition to law and legislation, there's personnel and public employees, budget and audit, and the Racial Equity Committee that is new. Katie Maple will continue on as chair for law and legislation. Rick Jennings will chair the PNPE, the Personnel and Public Employees Committee. Roger Dickinson will become the chair of Budget and Audit, and Mai Vang will be the chair of the Racial Equity Committee. Some of these are much more impactful than the vice mayor and mayor pro tem designations, because especially the law and ledge one is really the person. So Katie Maple in this instance, who is chairing that committee, does have a fair amount of sway in terms of like what the council is going to talk about, because like we mentioned earlier, this is the first stop for any kind of new ideas that people are trying to bring to the full council. So this is a pretty important designation. Yeah, and that's it. I don't think that this is an item that anybody really needs to like show up to speak on unless you are inspired to. But it is good to know who is running these things, because every now and then, like Tuesday, there's going to be something that happens at one of these committees that is impactful and that we will be asking the community to support on.
Yeah, definitely.
Lastly, at the council, there's item 26 is the Sacramento Homeless and Housing System Partnership Structure Update. This is probably a nothing burger. This is like a follow up basically to the. Does anybody remember? If you remember the quote unquote historic joint meeting on homelessness that the bunch of the cities in the county, like all the cities in the county and the county all did last October, came together and met for 5 or 6 hours. And I mean, Gabe, do you have anything to say about what was actually accomplished? Or
I mean, I think what's really important is that, there is a consistent tendency between the county and the city of Sacramento to pass the buck when it comes to actually providing solutions for the affordable housing crisis. You'll have people who are council members and members of the board of supervisors who are consistently saying, well, this isn't my responsibility. They don't say it like that, but that's essentially the message that comes from them, is that they constantly are saying, no, this is on the city, no, this is on the county. And there's a lot of obstacles to actually getting the solutions that we need because of the kind of bureaucratic nature of having a city and county government with different charters and different ways that they're able to approach this issue. So I think that they utilized that meeting to really pat themselves on the back, that they were finally doing what so many people had requested that they should have been doing the whole time, which was talking together. But in terms of actually bringing any solutions to the table and actionable items, not a whole lot.
yeah, so we'll see. Probably not going to be anything of note to go on there, but hope springs eternal. Maybe somebody will say something inspiring. We will see. Also happening Tuesday, we have the first Sacramento County Board of Supervisors meeting starting at 9:30 a.m., which is a great time for them to have big public meetings. Uh, anyway, so they're kind of doing some of the same stuff. So they're going to elect their board of supervisors chair and vice chair and do all that. It's pretty much the same kind of deal. It's mostly ceremonial. Anything to add there, Gabe?
No, no, I think, yeah, in terms of impact, not huge, just really, getting an understanding. Like Skylar said, Board of Supervisors meetings generally happen at Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. Transparency and accessibility being a focus area of SJPCs is clearly not a focus area of the Board of Supervisors, making it very difficult for working people to show up to their meetings and keep track of what they do. And also just because of kind of the nature of the Board of Supervisors, it is a slightly more convoluted governmental process than the city, where we at least in my perspective, feel a little bit more of like a direct line to our representatives because they're representing a much smaller physical area. Whereas like the board of supervisors are just kind of like these 5 people behind a curtain that manage a huge budget, which we're going to talk about in a second, and make really, really important decisions for all of the cities that make up Sac County. So if you're just kind of interested in terms of who is going to be sitting as, their chairperson and vice chairperson, and maybe getting a better understanding of what those roles are, then yeah, definitely show up at that meeting at Tuesday at 9:30. But there are some other really important items that we're about to talk about that are also going to be happening at that meeting. So even if you aren't showing up for that one, you're still in for a treat.
Yeah, so I am going to fast forward here to item 41, which would adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 9.120 of Title 9 of the Sacramento County Code relating to camping. So this is at the request of Supervisor Rodriguez. This is continued from last year, I believe. It got pushed. But this, basically what this does is let me see here. It makes it easier for the county to hunt down unhoused people who are camping on, quote, vacant parcels, commercial strips, and land next to neighborhood open spaces. So right now there's a lot of land, especially out in the unincorporated county, that is unused, uninhabited, but may be owned by somebody who doesn't live in the area or who does live in the area but is unresponsive. And these are often places that are attractive to people who are trying to find places to be where they can like live without being harassed or with fear of sweeps, or can like set up some sort of stability for themselves even temporarily. The issue that the county has with it is because a lot of these areas are privately owned, it limits what they are able to do in terms of entering the property and sweeping the people, or doing quote unquote abatement or whatever. So this ordinance would make it easier for the county to basically hunt those folks down on private lots that are vacant and sweep them. So kind of, again, this sort of, I'm not going to repeat the whole thing, but this is kind of in the same league with the Phil thing, where you got to have places like, again, we've been banging our heads against this wall for a million years, but you got to have places for people to go. And their whole thing, they're going to be like, oh, well, we'll go out first and we'll offer the services that we have and the shelters we have. And dog, there's like 9,000 people out here, and you got like less than 2,000. I can't remember what the current numbers are, but it is nowhere near the amount that we need. So, again, to come in and continue to legislate on, where people are not allowed to be and where it cannot be, especially because this, they can't be on public property. They can't be on private property. They can't be the amount of areas where people are legally allowed to be is nearly non-existent, and this kind of a law just makes that a lot worse. So this is basically just another step in making it illegal to be a poor person.
Yeah, yeah, this is really, a good example this upcoming week of county and city working in tandem to continue a campaign of overall like dehumanization of our unhoused population. Really, really not only making it, you're seeing on the county, making it easier to push unhoused folks out of areas that they designate as being off limits for them. But then, as Skylar said, they'll pay lip service to offering a shelter bed to them, but then you look at the city and you have a council member who's actively trying to limit the amount of shelter beds that are available, right? So it's like, when you read those things in the SAC-B of all unhoused folks before being swept or offered services, it's, you call the number for a shelter bed, and 9 times out of 10, maybe even 9.9 times out of 10, there isn't one available. So even if someone is willing, they're not able to. They're not able to get what's actually needed.
Yeah. So we, Gabe, I believe you will be attending this one, right? Because I will be
Yes.
2 blocks away at City Hall. Gabe will be at this one if you'd like to join, to attend and advocate that they discontinue these kinds of practices and start taking real solutions seriously, rather than just trying to criminalize and arrest our way out of a problem that cannot possibly be solved in that way.
Yep.
Anything else to say on that one, Gabe?
No, but like I said earlier, 9:30 is a difficult time for working people to show up, but it is, especially with the county, really, really important for folks who are able to show up, make public comment, share your thoughts on these items, because I think that what's the phrase? A lot of cruelty exists in the realm of anonymity. People are able to get away with a lot when the public doesn't see it.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so the last one that we are going to flag for you this week is item 55, which is the county's fiscal year 2026-27 budget workshop, approval of budget priorities and initial resource allocation approach. So to their credit, they are advertising this as a workshop that they want the community to be at. So this one, they will actually be starting at 2 p.m. And this will just kind of be a general overview of the budget, what their priorities are going to be this next year, where like people want it to go. So, we've often said that, if you want to know unequivocally what your elected leaders' priorities are in the city, look where they put their money. And so these budget discussions are super, super important. And especially with the county, the city is it has a similar thing, but the county also encapsulates the sheriff's department and the jail. And that's where a lot of our budget goes. And Gabe and I have pointed out about kind of this last item, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in other areas that are super, super underfunded. And a big part of that is, and that's a budget decision. So that will be something that will be discussed, and I highly recommend, if you can make it, to cruise over there and let them know, where it's just kind of, even if it's not in homelessness, where do you think that Sacramento County should be putting their money? If that's into parks or programs for kids or anything like that, this is a good opportunity for you to show up, look the people who make those decisions in the face, and let them know, because otherwise they're just going to spend it on building the jail into a skyscraper or something.
Yeah. I think like Skylar was saying, this is ultimately, the budget is a moral document, right? It's a testament to what the city and the county, specifically at this meeting, the county, where they put stock and what they value. And it's important, I think, for folks to understand, and we're going to be talking about the budget a lot over the next couple of months, is that the city of Sacramento's budget for last year, or the 2025-26 budget, was $1.7 billion, whereas the county is $9.2 billion, right? So there is a tremendous There's a tremendous impact that $9.2 billion can have in our communities, on the issues that you care about, that we care about, and having a say in where that 9.2 billion gets put, is incredibly important to have community input on that, right? Not to say that they're always going to listen to us when we show up, but it's
They
better
almost
to
certainly will
try,
not.
right?
But
Yeah.
do
But
not go quietly into the good night.
yes, yeah, exactly.
I think it's also important while we're talking about this to point out for people who don't know that not only does the county have like a significantly higher amount of money to spend, but also the Department of Health and Human Services is a county department. So the city takes a ton of heat all the time for homelessness, and they deserve to because they do have a lot of money and do have a lot of power to make the situation better, and most of the time they don't use it. So I'm not trying to let the city off the hook. However, when people are like, oh, well, we need more services and we need more things for people, that is a county responsibility. And they get to shirk it all the time, largely because most of the people who live here don't even know the difference between the county and the city. But if you're listening to this podcast now, you do. The county has all the money. The county is responsible for health and human services in the county of Sacramento, and that includes the city, the incorporated and unincorporated parts. So they really have a huge responsibility, and they have a history of not being super responsible about that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
So, the more people show up to let them know about it, the better off all of us are.
Yeah, if you want to see, more money being put into parks and helping folks who are living on the street get into some form of shelter rather than Sac Sheriff getting a new Predator drone, then definitely show up to these meetings and make your thoughts known.
Yeah, so I think that kind of wraps it up for the items that we have flagged on the agendas for this week. But we will be back next week to let you know how we'll give you kind of a rundown on how all of this went Tuesday if you weren't able to make it and weren't able to check it out. And we will also give you a new list of things to be looking at for the next week of city and county meetings. I do want to reiterate that, this is the first podcast that we've done. We kind of wanted to give you a little bit of a flavor of what we wanted to do with this. But the thing that makes social justice Politicore strong is the core aspect of it. That's CORPS. Meaning that we don't want it to be a thing where Gabe and I are doing this every week. We would much rather have community members coming in, specifically if there's an area of, interest that you have being discussed. So if climate is a big area for you and they're doing a Coyote Creek thing, we want you to come on and tell us why that's important and explain it to us and to our listeners. Same if police accountability and police oversight or law enforcement is an area of interest for you. We want you to come on and share that info because and even if none of this is, if you just kind of like, we want to foster a community of people who are interested in what is going on at a local level and interested in like promoting education and kind of a community around people who want to be involved in that. And so if that's you, we really, really, really want you to reach out to us. I will link in show notes to, we have like a short form that's just like email what you're into, how we can get in touch with you, that I will link in the show notes. But really, please reach out to us however you want. We have a Signal thread that we post in regularly. We definitely want you to be in that. So we will link to the sign up for that as well. If you aren't already, you can follow along with the running agenda tracker, in which we keep track of every week. We make our flags, because there's always 150 items on these things. And so we go through and kind of select the ones that seem especially relevant to our community. And we make sure that you know about them, because sometimes those things do fly under the radar and we don't, we can't we can't be doing it like that. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, it's
yeah, so
really
follow
this.
us on social media. We're super excited to be out here and kind of getting started with a new year of SJPC. There's, we're a small team, but all of us are really pumped to go into 2026 and really, build something with all of you. So we encourage you to please reach out and get as involved as you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a community resource, and because it is a resource for the community, it needs to be of the community as well. So we want to make sure that people, are getting the information that's relevant to them, that's important to keep track of, but they're also contributing their thoughts, their expertise to this analysis as well. Because we are an incredibly diverse city of folks that have so much passion and a lot of drive to do what's right. And those folks aren't always the ones that are on the dais. So we want to make sure that they have a place to have a voice, and get other people rallied around issues that they care about.
Absolutely. All right. I think that's it, Gabe. We did it. Episode 1 in the can.
Sweet.
All right. We'll see y'all next week.